Lesson 8.2b, Pythagorean Theorem. In a right triangle, the sum of the squares of the legs is equal to the square of the hypotenuse. A right triangle is a triangle that has a right angle. If it has one right angle, that makes your triangle a right triangle. The legs of the right triangle are the two sides that make up the right angle. So in this case, I've labeled those A and B. The legs will always be A and B interchangeably. The hypotenuse is always the side opposite the right angle, and it's always the longest of the three sides of a right triangle. The hypotenuse will always be labeled C when you're to use the Pythagorean theorem. So, here's the Pythagorean theorem, and here's what it says. It says that A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. When I square the legs and add them together, they're going to add up to the hypotenuse squared. The converse of the Pythagorean theorem says this: if the sum of the squares of two sides of a triangle equal the square of the third side, then it's a right triangle. Pause the video and copy that down. Okay, let's practice using Pythagorean theorem. Problem number 1. Determine whether or not it's a right triangle. So here are the three side lengths of a triangle. And what we have to figure out is, are they the three sides of a right triangle? And the way we figure that out is, do these values go into Pythagorean theorem and do they work? Okay? All right, let's first look at the values that I have. 24, 25, and 7. And I have to label them A, B, and C. Now I know that the longest side has to be the hypotenuse, so I'll label 25 as C, and then I can label A and B interchangeably. So you can have A as 24 and B as 7, or vice versa. It doesn't matter. Okay? Now you will be allowed calculator in this lesson. So let's plug into the Pythagorean theorem. A squared would be 24 squared. B squared would be 7 squared. And that's supposed to equal C squared, which is 25 squared. Okay, let's go ahead and square these numbers. 24 squared is 576. 7 squared is 49. And 25 squared is 625. And the question is this a true statement? Is 576 plus 49 equal to 625? The answer is yes. Since these numbers, when plugged into the Pythagorean theorem, work, then you can conclude these are the sides of a right triangle. Let's move on. Number 2. Here are three sides of a triangle, and we're asked, are these the three sides of a right triangle? And how we figure that out is we have to test the three sides using Pythagorean theorem. Pythagorean theorem is A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. Okay, let's label our sides, A, B, and C. All I need to worry about is that the longest of the three sides has to be labeled as C. So C will be 20, and then I'll just do A and B. Okay? All right, let's substitute into Pythagorean theorem. A squared would be 12 squared. b squared would be 16 squared, and c squared would be 20 squared. All right, let's go ahead and calculate. 12 squared is 144. 16 squared is 256. And 20 squared is 400. Okay, so now the question is it true that 144 plus 256 is equal to 400? And the answer is yes. Therefore, what you can conclude is that these three sides do form a right triangle. Okay, number 3, try that on your own. Pause the video now, then go ahead, hit play, and check your answer. Okay, here we find that these three side lengths do not form a right triangle. Check your work. Okay, let's go on to number 4. Okay, there we go. Number 4, go ahead and draw this figure. There's my right angle. It is a right triangle, and I'm giving you the legs. The legs are 9 and 12, and the hypotenuse is unknown. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use Pythagorean theorem to solve for one of the missing side lengths. Okay, so first step is write the theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Next, let's substitute the values that we know. So I'll let a be 9, so 9 squared. I'll let b be 12, so plus 12 squared equals c is going to remain as c because we don't know its value. Okay, let's simplify here. 9 squared is 81. 12 squared is 144, and c remains a mystery to us. Okay, let's simplify by adding 81 plus 144, and I get 225 is equal to c squared. Okay, now let's recall that the opposite of squaring a number is finding its square root. Okay, and whatever I do to one side, I'm going to do to the other. So the square root of c squared is c, and you may use your calculator to find the square root of 225, which is 15. Therefore, 15 inches equals c. Okay, number 5. Copy down the triangle. It's a right triangle. I've given you that information. I've given you one of the legs, and I've given you the hypotenuse, and I'm asking you to find the measure of x, which is another leg. Okay, so let's start with the Pythagorean theorem. Let's write it down. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. I'll let a be 8. 8 squared plus our unknown is x. X squared is equal to the hypotenuse, which is 24 squared. Okay, let's simplify. 8 squared is 64. Bring down my x squared, and 24 squared is 576. Okay, in order to solve for x, I need to isolate x, so let's first subtract 64 from both sides. And so x squared equals 512. Again, let me remind you that in order to isolate x, if x is being squared, the opposite of squaring a term is to find its radical or find its square root. Whatever I do to one side, I always have to do to the other. So The square root of x squared equals x, and I'll use my calculator to find the square root of 512. And so I'll always round to the nearest tenth. Okay, so rounded to the nearest tenth, I would have 22.6 meters. Okay, let's move along. Okay, try number 6 on your own. On number 6, you're solving for the hypotenuse, C. Pause the video now, come back and check your answer when you're done. Okay, please check your answer. The hypotenuse of this triangle is 30 yards. Check your work and make sure that you're following the steps correctly. Okay, here's number 7. Please complete this one on your own. Pause the video.